Hey friends, today we're going to talk about something wild that happened on the high seas. Pirates. Not the fun kind you see in movies, but real-life pirates who caused big problems for the world. Let's go back to the early 2000s, off the coast of Somalia in East Africa. Imagine you're a captain of a cargo ship in 2007. You're carrying tons of wheat from Kenya to Saudi Arabia. Suddenly, you notice a small speedboat approaching your ship fast. At first, you think, maybe it's just fishermen. But before you know it, they're throwing ladders to climb aboard. You run to the ship's safe room, call for help, and even try to spray them with a water hose to scare them off. But it's too late. They board your ship, round up your crew, and threaten to hold you hostage unless someone pays millions of dollars. This was reality for hundreds of cargo ship crews in the Horn of Africa back then. Piracy wasn't random. It was dangerous and well-organized. By the mid-2000s, Somali pirates had learned to plan attacks with precision. They weren't just criminals. They were often desperate men reacting to a bigger problem. You see, Somalia didn't have a strong government in the 1990s. After the government collapsed, the country split into regions controlled by local clans. This left a 3,000-kilometer coastline with no rules. Big fishing companies from countries like Iran and Yemen saw an opportunity and started taking huge amounts of fish illegally. These foreign boats destroyed fishing grounds and ruined the local environment. Somali fishermen, with their small boats, couldn't compete. On top of that, some companies were dumping toxic and even radioactive waste into Somali waters. Imagine your home being flooded with poison and no one there to stop it. It's no wonder local fishermen were angry. Many decided to fight back. They took their tiny boats and started chasing away the foreign ships. At first, it wasn't about stealing, it was about protecting their livelihood. Some called it a coast guard, but others saw it as piracy. These early pirate attacks were small and basic. In 1994, for example, a group of 26 Somali men hijacked a cargo ship for just 5 days. They weren't looking for millions. They just wanted what they could take and then leave. But these small acts set the stage for something bigger. Then came the tsunami of 2004. It hit Somalia's coast hard, destroying homes, boats, and food supplies. It also washed up some of that toxic waste, making life even harder for locals. With no government support and their economy collapsing, many saw piracy as the only way to survive. By 2005, pirates started using motherships, bigger ships that allowed them to operate far from the coast. They attacked cargo ships using speedboats launched from these motherships. Pirates also got smarter. They used GPS, radios, and even shipping industry databases to track their targets. Suddenly, these attacks weren't just about survival. They became a profitable business. Ransoms changed everything. Holding a ship hostage could bring in millions of dollars. Suddenly, piracy was no longer just about fishing rights or self-defense. It became an organized criminal network. Warlords started funding these pirate operations, helping pirates get bigger boats, more weapons, and recruits. They even made it into a kind of local economy. People could invest in pirate operations and get returns, just like a business. By 2007, the Horn of Africa was the center of global piracy. About 30% of all pirate attacks happened in this small region. While it was dangerous for shipping companies, it was also a way for desperate Somali communities to survive after years of exploitation, toxic waste dumping, and foreign overfishing. But piracy wasn't just about money. It also became a story of morality and survival. Some pirates claimed they were fighting back against outsiders who had destroyed their waters. Others, funded by warlords, cared only about profits and power. And this is where the story gets really interesting. The rise of Somali pirates shows how poverty, environmental destruction, and weak governments can create a dangerous cycle that affects the whole world. By the end of the 2000s, piracy off Somalia wasn't just a local problem. It became an international issue that threatened global trade and captured headlines everywhere. Somali piracy started small, but by the mid-2000s, it had transformed into a serious business. The tiny fishing boats had grown into organized operations with larger ships called motherships. These motherships carried smaller attack boats, giving pirates the ability to strike far from the coast. They weren't just grabbing whatever they could. They were hunting for high-value targets. Pirates began using technology to their advantage. They used GPS to track cargo ships, satellite phones to communicate, and even checked shipping industry blogs to know where valuable cargo would be. They weren't just random attackers. They became very smart about targeting ships that could bring in millions. The concept of ransoms changed everything. Holding a ship and its crew hostage could now bring in millions of dollars in payment. Suddenly, piracy was no longer just about survival. It became a full-blown business. Local warlords realized this too and started investing in pirates. They funded bigger boats, better weapons, and even recruitment. It became a cycle. Pirates hijacked ships, collected ransom money, and then reinvested into their operations. By 2007, piracy off Somalia had exploded. About 30% of the world's pirate attacks happened in this region. At first, some pirates claimed they were protecting their waters from illegal foreign fishing, but as the money grew, morality took a back seat. Some pirates became ruthless, boarding ships and threatening crews to maximize ransom payouts. One famous story involved an American journalist named Michael Scott Moore. He was kidnapped by Somali pirates and held for almost 3 years before being released for a $1.6 million ransom. His story shows just how dangerous and profitable this business had become. These ransoms created an entire pirate economy. Money flowed back to warlords, who became richer and funded more attacks. Pirates didn't just attack small ships. They began targeting big commercial cargo vessels. For example, a Ukrainian coal ship traveling from South Africa to Turkey was hijacked, and pirates demanded $700,000 before releasing it. In another case, a Japanese cargo ship and its 20-person crew were held hostage until $2 million was paid. These were huge sums for Somali pirates, who lived in a country where the average annual income was just a few $100s. As piracy grew, it started to attract international attention. A key moment came in 2005 when pirates attacked a luxury cruise ship full of Western tourists. They fired rocket-propelled grenades, and although the tourists escaped unharmed, the story made global headlines. Suddenly, piracy was no longer a local problem. It was a worldwide concern. The tsunami of 2004 had already weakened Somalia's coastal economy, and the attacks added another layer of danger. Humanitarian aid ships and cargo vessels carrying essential supplies were sometimes targeted. Pirates didn't just want money. They wanted power, control, and influence. They saw the shipping lanes near Somalia, especially around the Gulf of Aden and the Suez Canal, as an opportunity too good to pass up. Pirate operations became professional. They had leaders, investors, and even support staff. Some towns turned into pirate hubs, where anyone could invest in a pirate mission and share in the profits. Local communities sometimes supported pirates because the money helped fund schools, hospitals, and basic services. But most of the profits went to the warlords and pirate bosses, who built luxury villas, bought fancy cars, and threw big parties. Pirates were no longer just desperate fishermen. They were business-minded criminals. They had lawyers, accountants, and people who could check ransom payments for authenticity. The operations became well-oiled machines. By 2008, a single hijacking could bring in millions of dollars. In 2011 alone, over $150 million in ransoms were paid. But piracy was still dangerous. Hostages could be killed if negotiations failed, and crews were often threatened or harmed to ensure compliance. Ships were now equipped with defenses like barbed wire, safe rooms, and even armed guards. International navies began patrolling these waters, but it was still tricky. Pirates often used hostages as human shields, and the vast open ocean made enforcement difficult. Despite these dangers, piracy in Somalia thrived because it was profitable and the conditions that caused it, poverty, weak government, foreign exploitation, still existed. It became a cycle. Money flowed into pirate operations, local communities tolerated them, and warlords continued funding attacks. The more organized and dangerous piracy became, the more the international community had to respond. In a few years, Somali piracy had evolved from a small, survival-based activity into a global crisis. Ships were no longer safe, ransoms were high, and the pirates were sophisticated. By the end of the 2000s, the world had finally taken notice. The Horn of Africa had become the epicenter of modern piracy, showing us how desperate circumstances can transform ordinary people into organized, highly profitable criminals. By the early 2010s, the world had finally started taking Somali piracy seriously. Governments, shipping companies, and international organizations began working together to protect ships and crews. The first step was prevention. Ships traveling through high-risk areas like the Gulf of Aden started using simple but effective defenses. Barbed wire and razor wire were placed around the decks, doors were locked, and safe rooms or citadels were created for crew members to hide in if pirates attacked. High-pressure water hoses were used to scare off attackers before they could climb aboard. Another big change was the use of armed security personnel. Ships were allowed to hire guards who were trained to protect the vessel and crew. These guards made a huge difference, as pirates could no longer approach with impunity. Shipping companies also started organizing their vessels into convoys, where multiple ships traveled together with naval escorts. This strategy helped protect the ships from attacks and made it harder for pirates to pick targets. International navies, including those from the US, Europe, and India, began patrolling the region. They used modern ships, helicopters, and snipers to respond quickly to pirate attacks. However, the ocean is massive, and pirates often blended in with local fishermen, making it difficult to act without endangering innocent lives. Even with these challenges, these combined efforts started to reduce the number of successful pirate attacks significantly. By 2012, the number of hijackings dropped dramatically. The once profitable business that had attracted warlords and criminals began to shrink. Pirate bosses no longer had easy access to quick ransom money, and their expensive operations started to fail. The towns that had thrived on pirate investments saw fewer ships, less money, and a decline in pirate activity. The decline of Somali piracy taught the world some important lessons. First, prevention and preparation matter. Ships equipped with defenses, trained crews, and security measures were much harder to hijack. Second, international cooperation is essential. Pirates operated across borders, so only a coordinated global response could stop them. Third, addressing root causes is just as important as stopping the attacks. Piracy thrived in Somalia because of poverty, lack of government control, and foreign exploitation of local resources. Without improving the economy and governance in the region, piracy could easily rise again. Interestingly, while Somali piracy declined, the problem didn't disappear entirely. It shifted to other regions, such as the Gulf of Guinea off West Africa, where pirates began targeting oil tankers. The lessons learned from Somalia were applied, but these new regions came with their own challenges, making piracy a persistent global concern. Even though Somali piracy was largely controlled by the mid-2010s, its story remains a powerful example of how desperate circumstances can turn ordinary people into highly organized criminals. What started as fishermen defending their waters became an international crisis, showing how poverty, weak governments, and opportunity can create unexpected consequences. Today, Somali piracy serves as a case study for governments, international organizations, and shipping companies. It reminds us that crime isn't just about greed. It can also be about survival, opportunity, and the environment in which people live. By studying these events, the world can better understand the importance of preparedness, coordination, and addressing root causes before small problems turn into global crises. In the end, the rise and fall of Somali piracy is a story of transformation, from desperate fishermen to sophisticated criminals, from lawless chaos to international intervention. It's a reminder that the oceans, while vast and open, are never completely lawless, and that even the most profitable criminal enterprises can be stopped when the world comes together.